I graduated with 10 people from high school. It was a very small class, a very small school. And so going to Washington State, that was the big town for me. And that's the time was 25,000 people or something. So
a prop tech company. Yeah.
yep.
There's different tech for everything. Spin tech, prop tech, rec tech, comp tech. So
I'm not giving you a $40,000 credit. He's like, I'm going to walk. Have you done one? And I'm like, see you later. So that fell out.
hello and welcome back to the Masters of Real Estate. This is Nick Shah. Today, we are going to learn from Jeremy Henley. Jeremy, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's good to talk with you today.
Likewise, seems like you're also joining us from the West Coast.
That's right. We're in Carlsbad, just a little north of San Diego.
Yeah, I'm in Northern California, Marin County, so pretty close to you. Jeremy, had a chance to look at your background and, your perspective. Very excited about our conversation today. Before we get into all of that, I'm sure listeners want to understand who you are. So how do you introduce yourself these days, Jeremy?
Well, today I'm founder and CEO of a startup company, technology company, and we focus on the real estate industry. That's what I tell most.
A prop tech company. Yeah.
Yep.
There's different tech for everything. Spin tech, prop tech, rec tech, comp tech. So it seems like...
So sometimes I stay away from that because, unless you're in the space, you might not know what that means, right?
It's true. So you're founder and CEO of a prop tech company. But before we get into what you're doing there, people really want to understand how you are like. So what spirit, animal, or bird best describes your operating philosophy in life?
I've been told lion is, multiple people have used that one as the closest to how I work through life, is like a lion, kind of hanging out in the weeds and understanding what's going on out there before striking.
And why do you feel the lion is the best spirit animal that describes your operating philosophy?
Kind of what I just said. I like to take time to understand things and learn as much as I can about whatever it is, the decision that needs to be made, whether it's personally, professionally, whatever, and consider it for not an unreasonable amount of time, but to really understand it if I can and find the right time to make that decision, whether that is, striking like a lion or just jumping into something, really trying to get as much data as I can about it before pulling the trigger.
And so that is kind of like a lion who is very deliberative before striking down their prey. Are there any other elements of a lion personality that you closely associate with?
Maybe hiding in the weeds until at that time, right? And just kind of, I'm outgoing. I'm on that, I'm on the type A side of things, but barely, right? And so I have no problem kind of not necessarily being in the spotlight, but right there behind those people, kind of studying what's going on and, making the point I want to make at the right time.
Wow. Yeah, I love that, Jeremy. So if you had to now also summarize your entire professional journey so far, and you've had quite an amazing journey, and we talk about that, but if you had to summarize all that up in a metric, ideally a dollar metric, what would you say that is?
So far, it's about $400 million. And that is roughly what I've sold throughout my career in software largely, but other services as well. And they're pretty big deals that add up over time, right? So not one deal that makes that number and a whole bunch of little ones and some big ones along the way too. But yeah, that's something I've thought about. It's kind of the one of the bigger sales I made. The sales manager I worked for at the time said, "Man, that's probably the biggest sale I ever make." And I immediately thought, "No, that's not going to be the biggest sale I ever make."
Wow. So that's amazing. It seems like we're going to learn a lot about sales and entrepreneurship and prop tech today. So very impressive, Jeremy. But let's go back to a phase in your life when that number was 0, before you started this amazing journey that you're on right now. How would you describe your broad trajectory so far?
I've kind of always been in some sort of sales, I feel like, even in school and elementary school, I was trying to be the class president and, then the president of the ASB and the president of my fraternity and the president of all the fraternities. And, that was selling me. right? Before I was selling someone else's stuff. And, I've kind of continued on that path. I went to school for marketing, but I took an internship during school in marketing, and the guy I worked for there said, if you want to get into marketing, you really need to get out there and learn how to sell. So you should try to get a job in sales out of school, which I did. And I never went back. I've been in sales or sales management other than, founding this company, which is still sales in my mind, my entire career. Right. So for 24 years, so I've been, selling something.
Wow. And your journey in college definitely describes mine as well. I was a president of my fraternity eventually and took over all the fraternities in college. So yeah, quite a lot of commonalities. But seems like you went to your undergrad in the Pacific Northwest and then got a job in sales soon after. How was the transition to go from, essentially the alpha leader in your college to being a junior sales rep in a corporate environment?
It was pretty nuts. So, I grew up in southeastern Washington State in a little tiny farm town of a few hundred people. I graduated with 10 people from high school. It was a very small class, a very small school. And so going to Washington State, that was the big town for me. And that's, the time was 25,000 people or something. So going from there to downtown San Francisco, that was like a foreign country to me at that time. So that was pretty crazy. But I knew it was a good opportunity. And actually, one of the things my father said was, if you can figure out how to make it there, you can make it anywhere. It's expensive, it's competitive, and that's exactly what it was. And we did all right there. So that really gave me a lot of confidence, kind of going into other phases of my life.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar to what Frank Sinatra said about New York City, right? You can make, or we can make it. Yeah, I agree. So, you start in this sales trajectory, and taking a look at your background, seems like in your first company itself, you quickly joined the President's Club where you hit the quota super majority of the weeks of the year. So what, skills or traits did you absorb that helped you become so good at sales so quickly?
So back then I was selling uniforms, and actually not even selling. It was a rental, right? We'd drop off clean ones and pick up dirty ones, and the guys would be back the next week. And I was selling contracts to do that all over San Francisco. So, I'm in auto repair shops. I'm talking to maintenance people, talking to cooks and chefs and hotels and all their stuff. I was trying to, do these deals with. And San Francisco is, such a melting pot of people. And most of them, when you call, first, they just hang up on you. So you get really thick skin really fast. But you also learn how to very quickly engage somebody and get them interested, and at least set a meeting with them, and then we would go and meet with them, right? And it was just hardcore. Most people turned over after 6-7 months and never made it in that environment. So just making it through that was a great thing for me. But when I would meet with people in that city and be talking uniforms with them, their stories were incredible, right? And I would just I was doing well enough selling the uniforms that I didn't need to go in there, do a quick sales pitch, go on to the next one, right? I spent time talk with them, and it was fun because it was interesting to just learn their stories. And in that process, I built tons of rapport, and it was very genuine, right? Because I was truly curious about, how did you get here? Here's my story. And they thought where I was coming from was crazy. And most of the time I thought where they were coming from was pretty wild. And so it ended up in, hey, I really like you. Let's switch companies and I'll do business with you now. And, that was what I really, first of all, don't take rejection hard. It takes a bunch of no's to get to a yes. And so that was a key part of that, learning that, my first real outside sales job. And then just learning how to talk to all kinds of people from all walks of life and not treat them any differently than anybody else. And, it worked.
Wow. So it seems like a combination of three things, like you say. One was, not taking rejection to your heart, being thick-skinned. Second was genuinely being curious about, helping your customers succeed, and learning also how to engage with a melting pot of people. There must have been an internal drive inside of you that got you through those tough moments, right? What was that like?
Yeah, when the alarm would go off and it was dark out and you knew you were headed to the office to do cold calls, those were tough days to drag yourself out of bed. But growing up on a farm, that was kind of, it'd be similar to that, in some ways, but I was becoming successful. And so I was motivated to like get to that next level and, just get started out. And, you're motivated to get a different car than you had in college. And, people were at that time, real estate was still going pretty crazy in the Bay Area before the Great Recession. And so, I wanted to get in that game. And so I was just hustling, trying to figure that out as well. And had an interest in it, way back then in the real estate world. And so, I just was motivated to just get ahead.
Wow. So seems like one of your motivations was saving up enough money so you could also get exposure to real estate.
Yeah. I mean, I was, way back then, that was kind of if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan, remember? So, I had a job and could fog a mirror, and they had like zero down kind of programs back then. So I just, I actually moved out of the city, which was a ton of fun and the best place to be when you're in your early 20s. But I moved out of the city and bought, my first condo in San Mateo, and, got to see that appreciate from, I was 24 probably at that time. And, I was hooked obviously after that. So, that was kind of the beginning of the real estate stuff, but just find a way to get in there and get something and start building.
Wow. Wow. So you're working this really tough job that you eventually find a lot of success in. Most people leave in 6, 7 months. You hang on there for what? Like almost 5, 6 years ish. And I'll you buy your first condo that appreciates, you get hooked. So what motivates you to then, continue your sales journey in the medicine industry?
Yeah. So the first company had an opportunity for me to move to the Northwest. And, my wife at the time was from the Seattle area, and my family was on the eastern side of the state. So, we thought it was probably getting close to time to start a family and that sort of thing. So it seemed like it made sense to move back to Washington. And, it's something I would advise against this in the future. But you start looking at other lower cost markets, and you're like, wow, I could own a place that's 3 times as big for what I could sell a condo for here in San Mateo. I can buy a huge house outside Seattle at that time. And so for all those reasons, I thought that was the right move. And I could see, this industrial industry that I was in, it was a good business, but it wasn't that interesting to me. And so I wanted to get into something else where potentially I could make more money, potentially I'd find more interesting. And so that was when I took a call from a recruiter and started talking to them and found a role with Boston Scientific. And so then I was in the medical space and selling technology and tools to physicians and in the operating room. And so everything was like learning again and doing that, managing a pretty big territory, and got a bump in pay. And so everything seemed like that was kind of the right path for me. But it wasn't too long into that job, I realized that the difference between what I was doing and the craftsman tool guy, the Mac tool guy that has a truck that goes to the car dealerships, it was like the same job. I was standing there next to somebody telling them how to use tools, and they were just ones for the hospital and for surgery versus working on your car. But in that role, you learn a ton about medicine, but I was never going to be a doctor. And that was kind of the thing I came to, is to be good at this job, I need to learn a lot about medicine, and I'm not going to be a doctor. So why am I spending all this time learning about medicine? To sell tools better is why, but I didn't get as much fulfillment out of that. And so after a couple of years, I kind of realized I needed to do something different. And at that same time, I'd realized that living in Seattle was not right for me either. The weather there just killed me, and I couldn't get out of that quick enough, to be honest with you. But so that was kind of the time in Seattle was really kind of figuring out something more of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And I immediately looked back to the Bay Area, and it just continued to get more expensive. And even though that was kind of Great Recession end of that, still expensive. And so I just didn't think that was going to be the right place. It was really hard to move up to Seattle and get a bigger home and kids and more stuff, and then try to move back to the Bay Area and downsize it. But I had a bunch of buddies that had moved to San Diego right after we had gotten out of school, and a couple of them, two of my best buddies, were still in that area, and so I had a hook for San Diego, and had been down here a few times, and just knew all the great things about it, and so that was kind of where I set my sights, and ended up finding some work down here, and that was really the first startup and the first software company I really worked for.
Yeah. So how was the transition from industrial sales to medical sales to eventually software sales? I mean, sales is sales, but how did your time in Southern California with software sales feel like?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I'd actually sold the condo in the Bay Area myself. I was one of those weirdos that did for sale by owner and was successful. Yeah. So I'd been selling uniforms. I'd sold some real estate. I did pretty well at the medical device company, and this opportunity came out to sell software, which at the time was credit monitoring type software, and we sold it to corporations after data breaches would happen, and that was just starting to take off. And I thought, what, it's a job. I'll get down to San Diego. I'll get my feet planted, and then I'll get the real job I want. That was kind of my thought when I took that job. It was just a small, they were doing $8 million, which is not that small, but they were just kind of getting some revenue going, and had a couple of big accounts that had them running, but they were still a pretty small company. And I thought this is just a way for me to have a job in San Diego when I get there. It turned out to be a lot different than that over the time I worked there, but that was that transition, and I was their first outside sales guy. They didn't know how to sell what they had. They didn't know anything about doing cold calls and, prospecting and closing deals and any of that. So I really started to bring a lot of that to that company when I started there.
Wow. And, there's an art to not just outside sales, but also cold sales, like you say, from taking client who's never heard of you and picks up a phone with you to closing that deal. So how is as you think about this journey and becoming so good at sales, what are some of the main takeaways you've learned in becoming so good at it?
Always be curious, and that extends into figuring out how the people you're selling to want to buy stuff, right? And then just trying to understand their decision-making process and all that kind of stuff you learn in the books. But, one of the things I don't think maybe gets enough attention on is understand the flow of the money, right? And, a company has money to spend on stuff, but how does it get to that other company? Like, what is the chain of events that has to happen for someone to add a new expense or to change a vendor for an existing expense? And understanding that, it's so different at so many companies, but it's different for a lot of different things that you could sell. And so it takes a lot of really understanding, how do I find those people? Where are they? And what do they care about? And you can start honing in on it, but it takes a lot of effort, but it's kind of it's a puzzle, right? And I guess that's kind of something I like to figure out is, solve these kinds of puzzles.
Yeah, it is indeed a puzzle. And I think you can only figure it out if you're, like you said, extremely curious and really, really figure out, why they're buying instead of how you will sell. And, really understanding the behind the scenes perspective behind it, like how money is even prioritized for that particular thing in the first place to be able to close a deal.
And even trying to figure out how to create demand for a new thing, right? We were selling data breach response services before people knew what that really meant. They didn't know what that meant like we do now. That term even was not really understood as to what that means and what the risks are and what the laws are, what a company has to do about it to handle that. So it was education for them and just really understanding how to bring that product and service to the market that didn't know they needed it yet.
Yeah. But if you had to differentiate between somebody who's really good at sales and somebody who's great at sales, what would you say is the biggest difference maker?
Listening. If salespeople kind of get that rap of like the type A, super outgoing, loud, huge personality, and that can get you a long ways, I think, in sales. But I think the ones who really listen and really understand what the customer is saying, potential customer is saying, and how they want to buy things, and what the problems are that they need to have solved. That's, in my mind, what helps you position whatever it is you have to show them how that's going to accomplish their goals. But if you don't know intimately what that is for them, you're telling them benefits of the thing that you have without them, and hoping that they'll connect the dots on their own. But you'll be more successful if you kind of help them connect those dots as part of your process.
Yeah, completely agree. Now, seems like the time you started engaging in software sales in Southern California is the same time you started your real estate company, which happens to have the same name as what Amazon was going to be originally called, Relentless. So tell us more about, like after your first successful real estate flip, which was your primary residence, as a for sale by owner. And while you were working in sales and growing your career there, what made you dive deeper into, building your real estate portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, it was something I had always wanted to do, but kind of so when I moved from Seattle to San Diego, that was really kind of the middle of the Great Recession. So my house, although it was worth more than what I bought it for, it was barely worth more than what I bought it for a couple years earlier. And so, I believed it would come back. So I rented that out. Before the market really changed, I picked up a second property, using some of the money I'd made on selling that condo. I bought a primary, and then I bought a rental property. And so things had turned. And so neither of those properties were, I didn't really have much equity in either of them at that moment in time. And I was moving to San Diego. So I thought, let me hold on to these properties. Let's get renters in there, cover the costs that way. Came here, rented here for a year. And then we were just starting to come out of the trouble. And I was able to, kind of just kick and scratch and put enough money together to buy a property here. And then I was in it, right? I had 3 properties and the huge expenses that I had to cover if there was a problem with tenants or something like that. But I figured it out. And then, when things turned around and all of a sudden I was building equity, 3 properties at a time at that time. And, I started learning about how to finance these properties and how to manage them and, how to do things the right way and get myself out of, the sticky situation a lot of people were in with, I don't have any equity in my home. What do I do? You start running out of options pretty fast if you have trouble back in those days. And a lot of people got caught up in that. But I was able to just, negotiate and work my way through it and make enough money to make it all fly. And, and it worked out over time.
Wow. Yeah. Love it. So through all this, let's focus on your present now. So how did you take all of these experiences, being so good at sales and, establishing yourself and succeeding in so many industries and building this really nice real estate portfolio on the side? How did all that culminate to you starting TheQwikFix?
So, one of the flip houses we had here in the San Diego area, we fixed it up. It was a great house on a golf course in this area. And one of the potential buyers who came in made an offer on it. We got under contract. They had it inspected. And he comes back and thought there was some issue with the foundation and had a foundation contractor come out. And the contractor says, "Oh, this is a $40,000 repair you need to have done to this place." And, I incredibly know enough to know that that was not the case. And so, this place was next to a golf course and it had like remnants of a flood somewhere in the past, but not any issues with the foundation. And so I'm like, we'll put in a trench drain or something for you for a few $1,000s if you like that, but I'm not giving you a $40,000 credit. And he's like, Almond Walk, have you done? And I'm like, see you later. So that fell out. And I turned to the agent and I was like, that was not a very good experience. And, we gotta fix this. And he's like, oh man, when the home inspection comes back, he's like, it kills so many of my deals, or it causes me so much stress. I have to find contractors and like nobody wants to come out and bid on this stuff. And then you have such a tight time frame. Oh, if you had a solution, man, I'd have 3 or 4 deals for you. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And he's like, it's horrible. It's the worst part of being a real estate agent. And I was like, okay, but he and I had done a number of rehabs, him as the agent, helping me find them and sell them for me. Did a number of them together at that point. And I said, well, we've seen enough of these inspection reports that we're getting or that they're sending us after we, do the rehab. I'm like, there's patterns in here. And I think I can fix that. And the other thing that was going on in my career at the moment was the data breach services we had sold. We ended up selling that to a lot of insurance carriers because they would insure companies against that risk. And so they kind of became my buyer, not necessarily the company that had the incident. And so I really started to understand the insurance world. That then led to the next job I had after that company, where we were truly a startup, pre-revenue kind of startup. And we were out hitting these insurance companies up for this software that would help them do underwriting on cybersecurity risk. And, the very short version of how that worked was we sucked in tons and tons of data from the web and how their computer systems were set up from the outside, same things a hacker could pull down. And we used all this data to give them a prediction of, how risky a company was. And we would sell that to the insurance carrier. And so, that was when I really started to learn about machine learning and predictive modeling, which now we call it AI. And, so I'm learning about that. We're selling this to the insurance companies, and, I'm starting to travel around the country, selling this to the different insurance companies. And, over time we realized it was actually useful not only to the cyber liability stuff, but we could use a similar engine and help make predictions on all sorts of lines of insurance. So that really opened up who we could sell it to. So I'm going all over the place, and I'm taking pictures of my receipts to fill out my expense report like a good sales rep, right? And, it shows up in an app, and it tells my expense form where I was, what I was probably spending it on, how much I spent, what the date was. That's awesome, right? And I thought maybe there's a way, if I know the answer to what problem is in these home inspections, maybe there's a way to like snap a picture of that, or, use vision technology and turn it into a quote. Could we understand it? There are enough patterns in here that would make sense, that I can reliably predict what it means by what it says there, and figure out what that repair would be. And so, I had this aha moment when I'm talking to this agent. He's like, it's a big problem. And I just thought, man, I think I can figure this out. And so I turned to the contractor I was working with on a bunch of these rehabs, and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about this company idea I've got. I've looked at a whole bunch of the home inspections now. There's patterns. I'm confident that, one guy might say the P-trap under the sink is leaking, and another guy might say the drain in the cabinet under the kitchen sink is leaking. I know that they're talking about the same thing. I think AI could figure that out too. And he's like, I don't know what that means, but, if you sold it, I would do the work, because getting the work is half the job as a contractor. He's like, so if you can line up jobs for my guys to just go out there and do, he's like, especially like to do filler jobs where we've got a big project going, and, we are waiting for a permit to come through, or, there's change order or something, we can't work that day. What am I got to do with my guys? I got to keep them busy. So if I could fill in, these 1 or 2 day type jobs from home inspection related repairs, that'd be awesome. Be happy to let you have a commission for selling that for me. And so we thought, well, that sounds like Uber, basically. Yeah, it's a marketplace where we match up homeowners with contractors. We handle the business and the pricing stuff in the middle, which is what Uber does basically for their marketplace. And so, so we got the company started, built out kind of V1 of the software, and I started going around to some agents that I had worked with in this, rehab space. It had brought me deals or sold deals for me. And I just went all of them first and said, hey, I've got this. What do you think? And they're like, this is awesome. Can't wait to use it. Keep going. And so we launched the company, got some sales pretty quickly, and just going door to door with agents that were friendly. And, pretty soon they're sharing a quote from us with the other side of the transaction and getting their client a credit, or using it to get rid of the guy saying, I need a $40,000 credit, when they have a reliable quote very quickly that says, this can be fixed for $1,500. And so both sides of the transaction were using these and sharing with the other side. And we started getting this network where people just started to come to us and find out about it, because the agents were spreading the word. So that's kind of how we got started.
That's incredible. What a story, Jeremy. Wow. So just to recap, you basically solved this problem for yourself, for your own home you were trying to sell on the golf course, where contractor heavily misquoted the price, and you turned it into your existing knowledge of how optical character recognition systems work, to figure out how to convert an inspection report into a list of changes or upgrades the property needs or improvements or fixes or whatever it is, and quickly get a quote from contractors for that to hyper simplify the home selling process, which is a win-win for all, right? The home seller gets the best price for their home, the agent gets highest commission, the home buyer buys a home where they have confidence in the fixes, and the contractor gets work to do, and you make money from doing all this. So sounds like an incredible story, Jeremy.
Yeah, we just really wanted to bring transparency to it, because in the past it was just a guessing game and kind of a fight over the dollar amount of this stuff, but it's really an opportunity to fix stuff too. And it's so much friction between buyer and seller and the agents, and the contractor doesn't want to help them because it's lower probability that they're going to do the deal. And so there's just so much friction there, and this marketplace solution solves everybody's problem. We get the agent the information, the client the information that they want about the costs, and when they approve the work, the contractor gets access to this business that they didn't have access to before.
Yeah. So now when you think about the fully built out app and you're already growing, scaling, sounds like you're making revenue already. How do you describe the ideal customer journey of working with QwikFix?
Yeah. I mean, our end customer is the homeowner and the contractor on the other side of the platform, but it really starts with the real estate agent and in some cases the home inspector, but most commonly it's the real estate agent they're the trusted advisor in the transaction. And so the home buyer gets their inspection report back and brings up questions. Oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost? And who do I call? Are they available? Will they be available right after I close on the house? And they start asking the inspector and the agent these questions, and they often don't know the answer or aren't qualified to give the answer. And so they're guessing, or maybe they're spending a bunch of time trying to get someone to show up to give them an answer, but multiply that by all the different specialties you might need: HVAC, plumbing, electrical, roofing, general stuff. And it's really hard to try to pull all of that together. So, we solve the agent's problem and help them provide a better experience in the transaction for their client. And through that, we then meet this new home buyer and eventual homeowner. And that's ultimately how we get to them. But it's really solving this construction related stuff for the real estate agent in this moment in time.
I love it. So how would you say your product and your services separate themselves from 99% of the rest of the market?
Well, it's fast, right? So it's quick. And that is part of why we named the company the way we did. But it's really quick and you need it to be fast. And people, they just want the information, right? At this point, you just want to know, am I in way over my head on this house, or is this stuff not so bad? And how bad is it? Am I okay with it? And it's really hard to figure that out. It was until now. And so doing it very quickly, doing it very accurately, referencing very specific parts of the home inspection to ensure we're talking about the same exact thing. Because the alternative is maybe you get some other contractors out there. A lot of them still are handwriting quotes and giving you, the carbon copy, and others will text you afterwards a number, but it's got limited detail. Some use some software and you get a quote that's digital and things, but it's often full of language that the client doesn't really understand. And is it sure that we're talking about the same thing? So all of that is gone with our system. It's, very clean and transparent and easy to read and understand.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like if, anybody can call contractor and get a quote, but getting an instant estimate during the heat of a home selling process, when you're really worried about getting an inspector report and getting quick answers, there seems to be only one solution out there in the market, and that seems to be yours. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
And now, it seems like too good to be true. So are there any risks of working with QwikFix?
I would say no, absolutely not. I mean, look, we were not perfect, so we don't get it right every time, but we get it really close almost all the time. And, one of the things that we do is we absolutely use AI to do this as fast as we do, but the AI only takes about a minute. So we have most of the quote created in about a minute, and then we still have human eyes that get on it. So we only guarantee 24-hour turnaround, so that we have time for a person to look at it and correct anything the AI is getting wrong, which is pretty limited. So they can review a lot of requests coming in, but they look at it and they also make adjustments for things we don't yet do with the technology, like measurements and quantity counts and things like that. So, the inspector might say you need to upgrade the GFIs in the kitchen, but they don't always, very rarely tell you how many GFIs are in the kitchen. And so sometimes there's pictures we got to look at and count them up. Sometimes there's a picture with an arrow, but we got to look at it. The fence is falling over and there's a picture of it. How many feet? They don't tell you that. So we got to use our tools to estimate those kinds of things with some of the systems that we've created. But, because of that, I think we do get it really close. But, there are things we are continuing to learn. And when we make a mistake, we try to correct it and kind of chalk it up to research and development and learn where we went wrong and put it in that category.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense because there always need to be better data points to be collected when giving better estimates. That makes perfect sense. How do you monetize this? Seems like you get a cut from what the contractors make. Is that your?
Yes, there's two ways. Whoever uploads the report to us pays us $60, so $59.95, and for that price, it's kind of a quote for the property. So you can upload as many inspections as you have. Mostly it's just the main general inspection. Sometimes there's a sewer inspection or a pool or a roof kind of specialty type inspection. And we'll take those as well. And so we monetize it that way. And that's because a lot of times they are just using it to go and negotiate the transaction. And maybe they will hire us down the road for some of these things, but a lot of times they are just using it to get a number and use it to negotiate. So we charge for that, right? And there's value there, and so we charge for it. And then, correct, we have a take rate, very similar to like what Uber does on the jobs that come through our platform. So everything is handled on the platform. Upload your request, you view your request, you interact with your quote, you can buy everything there, payment, scheduling, and even communication happens all through the platform.
Yeah. So one of the differences, advantages that Uber and Airbnb have is they don't have a sticky marketplace, right? And this is my own words, I'll define it. When I say a non-sticky marketplace, I mean every time you want to go to the airport or go somewhere, you want the nearest available Uber, not necessarily your desired Uber driver, exact. Same with the Airbnb, every time you go on a vacation, you want to go to the best possible home, not necessarily go to the same home every time. But see, with contractors, once you love a contractor, which seems like your team is spending a lot of time finding amazing contractors, how do you solve for this stickiness problem where they still go to the platform and make sure you're compensated for all the work you're putting in and connecting the supply and demand together?
Yeah. So there's two things there. Maybe it's even just one thing and kind of two ways to look at it. Let's use your Uber example. So, you go on vacation, and I've been on vacation on, some Caribbean island or something, right? And you use Uber to get the guy there, and they're driving you to the hotel, and you're having a nice conversation, and he's like, "Hey, here's my business card. Just call me direct. Yeah, if you need another ride." And I say, "Oh yeah, no problem." A day or two goes by, and we want to go sightseeing some other part of the island. Hey, let's call up Joe and see if he can pick us up. And he's like, "Hey, good to hear from you. I'm just dropping somebody off the airport. I'll be there in 45 minutes. What do you do?"
Yeah.
You wait 45 minutes or you get on Uber. Another way. So I see us as the same way where, you might love that plumber, but if he's not available or he's not getting back to you as fast as you want and you really just need the price, you're going to go to a place that will give you the price quickly and has availability, right? And I've got a whole bunch of plumbers in this area that are all vetted and good standing, and we'll put the job out to them. And one of them that's got an opening when you want it done will be there to do the job.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because speed is your core element, and speed might not be available with your preferred contractor all the time. That seems to be a core difference. That makes perfect sense. How do you define the culture of working at QwikFix?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I think our culture is maybe a little bit of that lion in the weeds that I talked about. It comes from me. So, I think we're thoughtful about how we do things. We really take time to understand what's going on rather than just make an impulsive decision and see if it sticks. We really consider the real estate agent to start with and how to make this thing work really, really well for them. And so, being thoughtful in that sense. The other part of our culture is being scrappy. So, I grew up on a farm with not a lot and learned a lot of great lessons there, but we were scrappy. We had to just figure things out, and I've just always sort of done it that way, and want more for sure, but we don't have to spend on everything, and that it really has served us well this last couple years where, startup mentality was just grow, 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 grow. Who cares about expenses? Growth at all costs. And we never did that. And that's put us in a pretty unique spot now where, being thrifty or a little scrappy and like that, and coming up with new ways to figure this stuff out with limited resources is really what we've figured out. I mean, even how we built out our AI and some of the things we've done to train our AI has been really scrappy. We're not spending a bunch of money on compute like a lot of these companies are starting to find really expensive. You don't have that at all.
Yeah. And what is your personal strategy as a founder and CEO to, what strategies do you employ to maximize productivity from your team members at QwikFix?
Yeah. It's really trying to understand. So we have something we look at every Monday in our team meeting that kind of, here's the different things a company needs to do. These couple people might be responsible for that part of it. These people might be responsible for this part of it. There's a little bit of overlap between the two of them. And then all the way around kind of this wheel, so to speak. And, we look at that and we try to figure out what are the metrics, what matters with those specific parts of the business, and talk about them weekly at our meeting. And, everyone shows up with kind of their numbers and kind of their update for the team on their section of the business is doing. And we talk about it, and we also try to find ways to track it. I'm a big believer in the scoreboard, right? If you don't have a scoreboard, you don't know what the score is, and you can't tell who's winning, and you can't get better. Right? Even if you're just tracking your own golf score or something, you're not going to get better if you don't know what you did, right? So as we're building out something new, we're still trying to figure out some of those things are like what metrics do matter. So we continue to dive into that and try and figure those things out and look at them. So that's kind of and then I use that, to like, hey, looks like we're a little bit behind this week, or great job, we crushed it last week.
That makes perfect sense. And I heard a golf analogy, so we're going to talk about that afterwards, so we can find some time to play together. But seems like your name and your strategy are completely aligned, right? QwikFix describes everything you're doing. Most founders get the name of the company wrong. I myself had to change the name. So how did you get this so right? What's the story behind naming your company?
So I was on the golf course, actually, went out. The same one that had that house that I talked about earlier that kind of led to this whole thing. And I was playing golf with who's now one of my co-founders and is a contractor. And I was explaining the idea to him. I hadn't really, I didn't have a name for it yet. I was explaining it to him, and I was talking about how we're going to do it fast. He's like, oh, we'll just have to have these guys go out and bid these projects, but we could do it. I'm like, there's no touching it. It has to be fast. We're going to do this with just a home inspection report, and kind of described to him, when you come over and you're scoping out a deal, you're walking around and you're putting in notes, you're collecting data. That's all you're doing. We just got to find different places to get it. And we got to be fast. And he goes, we'll call it QwikFix. And that was it.
Yeah. I love it. So, I love this story. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to spell it funny because, I don't know, Washington Post or something has the website for it spelled properly. So we had to come up with a kind of a unique way to spell it and not screw up Quick too bad. But maybe someday we'll be in a position to buy it from them.
It's the same. Yeah, everybody has the same problem. Is domains are so expensive to start with. So everybody has to start with a terrible domain. And eventually, if you make enough money, your domain won't be a problem anymore. If you don't, your domain was never a problem.
Exactly.
Has your vision for QwikFix evolved over time, or has it mostly been the same deliberative approach you had back then?
Yeah, kind of one of the sales philosophies, kind of wrap that in, is trying to remove friction, make it as easy to buy as possible, whatever it is. And my experience was as a seller, and so that was actually where we started. It was more focused on the seller having a way to push back on the buyer who says, I need $40,000 credit, that the seller would be like, give me that home inspection. I'll upload it to my trusted company, the agent says, and they'll tell me what it actually costs. And I'll say, I'm not going to give you $40,000, but I will fix the problem for you as part of the deal. And then they can pay us at the closing out of the proceeds of the sale. And we thought, that way They're not even having to pull out their checkbook to send us business. And we're fixing the problem that I had that in that story, right, as the seller. And, there's kind of a culture among real estate agents that if you're on the listing side and you're getting asked that you don't want to do the work, you just want to give them a credit, right? Like that may not benefit the buyer or the seller as much, I don't think. But the agents are kind of taught, and there's kind of a culture of like, let's agree on a number and do it as a credit, and then we'll all go our separate ways because we don't want to get into some sort of unlock some other problem or something like that. Let's just get out of here while we can, get our commissions and go, right? And so, as we started to push the product, we thought that was how it was going to go, is that the sellers were going to be using it way more than the buyers. And, it's been completely the opposite. The buyers are buyers agents and their clients are who use the service way more than the sellers. We do see the sellers. In the Bay Area, it's a lot more common to do a pre-listing home inspection. So there we see sellers a lot more than in other parts of the country, which we think that's a much better way to do it actually is, why give the buyer all this leverage about your home? Why don't you fix things up first and put out a good product? Because you have to disclose it is why they don't like to do that, but that's not really invariant as we think it could be. So we're pushing hard on the original vision of you should do this on the selling side, listing side before you even put the property up. I think we'll have a dent in that over time, but right now, mostly we service buyers. And so we are working on some new strategies to bring in more on the listing side. That's kind of what's coming.
Makes sense. So it seems like your product market fit is with buyers right now, which also makes sense. And it seems like you're improving the product to fit with the original vision of helping sellers as well. Yeah. Personally, what are the biggest challenges you're facing as you focus on your aspirational goals over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to go fast with a company is tricky because you're constantly out of money and you're trying to hire people and, things go right. And all of a sudden you got a bunch of business and you're trying to service it. I love the problem, but, building a marketplace it's like building two things, not one, right? Because you're trying to find the contractors and figure that out, scale that up, and create demand on the other side of the platform. So it makes it twice as hard, I think, to make a marketplace work versus specific just going and selling something just to agents or just to contractors would probably be a lot simpler than what we're trying to do. But that's, for some reason, I guess like to try and figure out hard things. And, I enjoy trying to solve the problem and find ways to kind of pull them together. And for example, a lot of our contractors actually end up coming from our real estate agents and the ones that they know and that they like, but they either aren't available when they need them. And so they come through us, but they do want to see them get the work. So they join the platform and they have access to this work.
Yeah. You and me both love finding hard things too. I don't know, for a real estate agent or home inspector or home buyer or home seller listening to this right now, that's like, this is a no-brainer. I want to get started. How should they start working with you or your company?
So it's just theqwikfix.com, and quick is QWIK, theqwikfix.com. And it's free to set up an account. It's free to register as a contractor. Home inspectors do send us reports too. They want to improve their service offering. So often they'll buy the report on their client's behalf and include it in their offering. Agents are the biggest market for us, and sometimes they just point their clients at us and they'll come to us directly. So we're open for all of them. Just go on our website. There's no cost to create an account, and there's videos of how everything's going to look and what the process is like and all that good stuff. So that's where they would go, just straight to the website.
Love it. Now, as we take a step back, Jeremy, what's your ultimate vision for the future of the residential real estate industry?
I think there's no residential contractor that's got a brand that is nationwide. You find some regionals, you'll find franchises, but there's no one company that owns construction in the residential space nationwide. And I think that's where we can get to. Part of how you get to that is people find us before they even know they need a contractor, before they even own their home. They're thinking about home repair when they find us, and now we're there. We're there when they move in. We fix some things then. We see clients will not fix everything on their home inspection. They'll fix some things now, but then they'll come back to us because they're still alive in our system, and they'll put some more things in the shopping cart. They took care of the garbage disposal and the GFI switches. Now they're going to take care of the air conditioner. Now they're going to replace the roof before the storms start coming. And then, they're going to finally do that garage door. And then they're also like, hey, can you guys install a charger? I bought a Tesla. And, we can figure all those things out for them. But the way we are collecting our data and making use of it in the images and the language, we're going to get it to a place where anybody will be able to take their phone out and snap some pictures and some images and describe the issue that they're experiencing with their home, or the kinds of changes they would like to make to their home, kitchen remodel, bathrooms, and very quickly get an accurate quote that they can hire us right there and then, and we put it out to the right qualified contractors in that area with all the right qualifications, and go beyond the home inspection, right? And just be able to be the easy button for all home repair or remodeling.
That's an incredibly powerful vision. For a prop tech VC listening to this right now saying, I want to give some money to Jeremy because there is a real chance it could make this work, how should they reach out to you?
Me directly. So it's just Jeremy at TheQwikFix on that one. And we're closing up a safe round right now. And, this is, we're going to be break even by the end of this year. So we're in a really good spot to be able to scale it nationwide. We need growth dollars to keep hiring and cultivating a lot of these national partnerships we're pulling in right now. And, just continue to get out to new markets and build our networks on both sides of the marketplace.
Yeah, I love it. I'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions, Jeremy.
Still,
what do you know about the real estate industry that would surprise most listeners?
Well, I'm learning how archaic a lot of the systems are in MLSs and how the thing I had the least appreciation for, which I've learned the most about in the last couple of years, is the professional selling of real estate and what goes into that, right? I mean, I had bought and sold properties in every which way you can imagine, worked on them myself, hired contractors, all of that part of this, know lots of real estate. My parents and one of my brothers are real estate agents. And so, I knew about that, but I have no understanding of how complicated and kind of old and broken apart a lot of the like MLS systems are and how much work needs to be done there. So, if you are building a company and thinking about getting into the space, make sure you understand that part of this as well, right? It's I don't know if it's been a hindrance, but it has definitely, we've gone down some roads and, had to do a U-turn and come back from that on a couple of things that are, we thought would be good opportunities. But it's just some of these software systems are really tricky to work with when you get into that part of this business.
Yeah, tricky and entrenched in regulation and very hard to change. So yeah, completely agree. How is your personal real estate portfolio like these days?
So we probably do 1 or 2 rehabs a year. I'm very just kind of opportunistic when the right deal comes along. We'll snag it up. So we do that. I've got a couple rental properties outright. I participate in a couple of syndications, so I've got access to some larger apartment complexes and things like that where we've got a share in those. And and then we're in the middle of a remodel of our own home, and trying to figure out what we're going to do with it when that gets done. And we've got a big family here, so one exited and went off to college this year. We got a couple more years, so I get a couple more out of here, and then maybe we can let it downsize and something else.
Yeah, big family indeed. What is it, like 6 children? I read somewhere.
We did. I got a blended family now, so we're a little bit of a Brady bunch, but we got 5 boys and a daughter, and so she's second oldest and kind of rules the roost. But yeah, it's free. It's like a frat house around here for some reason.
So you obviously looked at hundreds of real estate deals. You analyzed them for your own self as well, for your own portfolio. Let's say a family office calls you and says they've had a liquidity event and they now want to invest $100 million in real estate. How would you advise them?
Well, give it to us. I mean, we will help you 10x that thing with what we're doing. No. I think one of the things I've learned after doing this and looking at different deals and buying deals, and some worked and some worked really well and some worked okay and some didn't work out very well at all. Is really knowing the markets that you're in. So if you're gonna invest it, know the market and like know what's going on there and really take the time to study it. And, I've been hurt sometimes, but I've also been surprised by like trusting others and in the syndication space. One of the guys I work with a lot there, he specializes in kind of like college towns and finding apartment complexes that are not on campus, but close enough, and getting basically the kind of tenants that the parents are going to foot the bill if the college student can't, right? And they worked out great, but there are these little kind of sub markets that I would have never thought to go after because I just wouldn't know how to access them or have the relationships with them. And I mean, this whole business is, you hear people say it's a people business and real estate, and it certainly it is, but it has a lot to do with your relationships then, and continuing to have good relationships. And it would be to try to invest that amount of money in this space. You don't want to just go do it. You're going to want to have other people helping you do that. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, here's one agent to work with. It's building a lot of relationships and finding a lot of different pockets to put it in. So it's very diversified, even in this space, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Really know your markets and diversify by, working with local agents and going as deep as possible. What's the best financial advice you've ever received?
I would say it's almost a tie of like buy properties and never sell them is one. And the other would be live within your means, and that's hard to do sometimes. It's always tempting to want to keep up with the Joneses, and as you make more, you want to spend more, and that's okay, but don't spend as much more as you're making, right? And and then there's ups and downs on that too. So sometimes you got to adjust, and that's hard. But doing what you can to live within your means makes life a lot easier, I think, over time.
Indeed. It's almost like live under your means, right? So it becomes easier to manage it. Yeah. So you have a big family, lost kids, your loved ones agree to be mentored by you. What's the number one skill you would teach them?
Work hard. Just keep working hard. I kind of grew up in that world of being on the farm, and that's just how you did it. And I didn't know any different until you see other work environments as you get older and work for different people and see that not everybody works that hard, and just grinding through things sometimes and working hard and sticking with it. Those kinds of things are what we really try to teach them. Struggled with that as the kids gotten older. How do I bring those awesome lessons I learned as a kid on the farm? How do I bring that to them when we live a pretty good lifestyle in Southern California, and they've got a little bubble they live in, and then all these things, which is awesome. You always want to try to get it better for your kids, I think. And but how do I get that? How do I get them to really understand it? This is hard work. You got to put it in the effort to get to that other side. None of these YouTubers or whatever they're into had it happen overnight, even though it looks like that. And so just really helping them understand.
Yeah, I love that. That was Jeremy Henley. He's the lion who went on from growing up on a farm in the Pacific Northwest to selling 400 million of volume to starting his own prop tech company and getting it to break even. And now has a vision of essentially consolidating the national home contracting marketplace. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home, or you're in the middle of a home transaction and you need a very quick but reliably accurate quote, check out thewikfix.com. It's quick with a W. We'll add the link in bio. And if you're interested in funding Jeremy's thesis, send him a note personally, jeremy@thewikfix.com. This is Nick Shah. If you ever want to talk about real estate, shoot me a note on CEO@home.lnc. Thank you.